Yeah, Dan, if you want to just kick it off and make some introductions and let's talk about insurance.
Yeah, let's do it. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Let me go ahead and start things off here by introducing my business partner, Ken Satkunam. He's the CEO of North Star Technology Group, and he's also the co-author of the book that we did, Cyber Attack Prevention. We're thrilled to be joined also by two gentlemen from Coalition, Matt Dort and Kevin Schmidt. We've been working closely with them over the last few months, and we really are excited to go over some of this so that what we really wanted to have was a kind of like a panel here where, Ken and I look at things from a certain angle and the guys on Coalition look at it from another angle and another lens. And I think this is going to be beneficial for all of us to collaborate on this and explain why cyber liability insurance is so important right now. So yeah, you may be wondering why you're here. And what we really hope that you walk away from this is understanding the importance of cyber liability insurance and just why every business out there really needs this right now. So I'm going to go into a few things here. Many people out here, some of you that may be attending this also, you may think that you are, a small business. The hackers aren't really looking for you. They're really looking for the big guys, and that's actually really the opposite right now. The big companies have cybersecurity budgets. They have teams of people that work every day to keep them safe. And so it's really the smaller and medium-sized companies that really lack the resources to keep themselves protected. And that's what we're seeing. And so, these security events that can happen to a company, they can be very substantial. The average is around $200,000, and 60% of the affected businesses typically close their doors within 6 months of a cyber attack. So we want to make sure everybody really understands this and how important cyber insurance is in fixing this. Any thoughts, fellas?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously couldn't agree more. The 60% of affected business closing their doors is a shocking statistic, but as you know, we work with a lot of organizations that have gone through similar issues, and you can see how the costs stack up, right? And I know you'll be talking a lot about that moving forward, but costs of investigations, forensics, communications, legal gets to be expensive. So it's not totally surprising to see that number.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Dan. We operate in the business of not if, but when. It's sort of a diametrically opposed viewpoint of what prevention really is. We're looking more at sort of, well, what happens when all the preventative measures ultimately fail. We, aside from the sort of the 60% of affected businesses closing the doors within 6 months of attack, we also are seeing on average, about 70% of our claims coming through are still based upon phishing attacks. So, these are, I mean, what that data says to me is that everything that folks are doing with North Star and what North Star is doing for their clients they're effective, but we're still having to protect companies against themselves, doing the wrong things out there. So it's not just what businesses can expect to spend, it's also how are they ultimately attacking these businesses.
Yeah, and when you talk about phishing, there's only so much that we can do, right? We can put a banner on the email. We can have all of these alerts going off telling the person that received the email, hey, this is a terrible email. This is going to really ruin your day if you click on this. And they're still going to click on it. And so at that point, that's when, things can go sideways. And, despite us doing the best job possible, it all comes down to human error. So another thing, I kind of think it's a myth. A lot of people talk about, well, I have all my data in the cloud. I've got Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace or, my line of business applications in the cloud. And so they just automatically assume that everything is safe for that reason. And, the attackers are smart. They understand that things have changed to the point now where everybody's moved to the cloud. And so the cloud environments in some ways are actually easier because the cloud itself is internet facing. So all of the portals, all the login screens, every single one of those, all the attackers can get to. It's just a matter of having the right username and password to get in. And just to kind of touch on this a little further, I hear this a lot where, people have this false sense of security that because they're using Microsoft or Google, that they don't have to do anything further, that they're taking care of all the security and everything for them. And what I've got here on the screen is the shared responsibility matrix. And all Microsoft and Google is a platform for you to store and process your data. It's still up to you to make sure that all of the doors, all of the windows going into that Microsoft or Google platform are locked and that only the right people are getting access into those. It's also important that you back up that data. You can see right here in the responsibility matrix, Microsoft is not responsible for that. Most people don't understand that. The other thing, business continuity, disaster recovery, Microsoft has washed their hands clean of that. Same with Google. So you really need to understand that just because you have Microsoft or Google, that does not make you safe. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think,
no.
or sorry to interject here. On the coalition side, we always like to preach that, this is not, insurance is an and product, it's not an or product. And similarly to how, when you purchase a house, putting in a solid roof and putting those stormproof windows, putting in your alarm system, you're still going to go purchase home insurance on top of that. And so the whole idea of, merging, our two services together is to really fill in those gaps. So at the end of the day, the clients are better protected. And then as Matt, I like to say, the ultimate goal is to really reduce the likelihood of that loss. And so, the cybersecurity tools are the first step, but you really need that insurance as that backstop to provide that, balance sheet transfer of risk to make sure that if your business is a victim of that.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. So yeah,
Get you reimbursed and get you back up and running again. That's what Action will do.
yeah. Sorry, Kevin, you were cutting out just a little bit there.
Oh,
Yeah, no, all good. I think we
what do we miss? Do I need to repeat myself?
No, I think you're good, Kevin. Yeah, I mean, basically the gist of it is, you really need to be doing things to prevent, a breach from happening, and then ultimately have a plan in place for when the breach does happen. Because even companies that spend millions of dollars a year on cybersecurity are still getting breached. So, there's only so much that can be done on the front end, and on the back end, you want to be prepared as well. So just to kind of illustrate a little bit more about the cloud and how, there's kind of like a false sense of security from what we see whenever we engage with a customer. What you see here, this is actually just a screenshot taken from one of the prospects that we do a risk assessment for. Whenever we do a risk assessment, we like to just show them, what's actually going on in their environment. So this is the Microsoft 365 failed login attempts over the last 90 days for this customer. And you can see there's 22,678 failed attempts just in 90 days. Hundreds of, attempts per day basically going on here. And they know the email addresses that they're trying to get into. They just don't have the right password yet, but they're still trying every single day. So, they are relentless. And the even more scary thing about this, this particular customer, when we assessed them originally, they did not have multi-factor authentication turned on as well. So it's just a matter of time for them.
Yeah, one guessed correct password and it's over.
Yeah. So, we kind of want to just give our audience an understanding of what we're seeing as far as the cybercrime industry. Basically right now there's so many organized gangs. There's all these different ransomware gangs that you hear about, and they basically provide all the tools necessary for any criminal to get involved in this game. So, a criminal that may have aspired to rob a bank, they may wise up and say, hey, look, if I rob a bank, there's a good chance I'm going to get caught. I'm probably going to have to do 8 years in prison. Why don't I check out this cybercrime gang? Because the chances of getting caught are very slim. If they do get caught, it's usually going to be, very minimal jail time. And the money they can make is usually much more substantial. So, most criminals are smart, and they don't really even have to know anything about computers to get into this. All of these ransomware gangs, they provide all the services needed for any criminal to get started. They basically call it ransomware as a service. So, a lot of people are not aware that this is going on, but this is a huge industry, and it's the fastest growing industry. It's even growing faster than the drug trade.
Yeah, just one thing to add on that. It's almost hilarious to think that there's a potential that there could be franchises, right? Franchisees and franchise ransomware as a service business model, right? We worked with a hospital that had a ransomware event, and there were essentially was call center staff reaching out and making outbound phone calls to get them to pay the ransom. I mean, they've got help desks, they've got call center, they have all of the tools. I mean, just like any other legit business now, except it's to break into your stuff and steal your data. Insane.
We've seen a coalition actually employee handbooks of threat actors. So they are that organized to the point where they have onboard these for their employees. They have HR teams dealing with HR issues.
Yeah.
They're a legitimate, illegitimate business.
Yeah.
That's how organized they are.
Yeah.
Imagine being the HR director for a ransomware thing to update their employee every year.
I've had dreams of it.
Oh, yeah, it's getting really bad. Just going to show you just a few more statistics. One of the things I want to point out here is there's 120 days to discover a data breach on average. I think what a lot of people don't understand is that usually everything starts, like Matt said earlier, with a phishing email. And then something in that phishing email gives that attacker access. They gain access basically to your cloud environment, or they gain access to the computer. And once they get in there, they're starting to look around and try to, find where the crown jewels are located. And so, you could be compromised right now and not know it. And then, at some point, once they feel like they've got a good handle on everything, they'll go in and they'll delete all your backups. They'll make sure that, it's like on a Friday afternoon, right before the weekend, they're going to try and inflict damage at the worst time for you. And then, all of this could have been prevented. And unfortunately, this is where cyber insurance really is important to have. And I think a lot of people it's very easy not to see it, because it is kind of like this dark secret kind of thing that's going on behind everybody's back. It's very secretive. People don't usually detect this kind of stuff. And so I think it's just really important for people to understand. You need somebody keeping things guarded on the front side, and you also need some very good, competent insurance protecting you if something does happen.
Yeah, Dan, just to piggyback off that, a kind of metaphor I like to use to give people a little bit of a context is, think about stepping into your vehicle on the road and driving around, and then every other vehicle is trying to crash into you and steal your valuables post collision. That is the adversarial landscape that we're dealing with. And, not to, you don't want to kind of get up here and sell that too much, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but for Matt and I and Coalition, like, this is very serious stuff, because these are small businesses that people have spent years building. And in one event, you can lose all of that work, whether it's, financially or from a reputational risk standpoint. And so you need those guys kind of doing the active monitoring. But then once again, too, you need that group to kind of come in there and protect you in the unlikely event of a breach. And a lot of people think that, cyber insurance, they don't really understand it, or think it's harder to qualify for, that it's expensive. And it, Coalition, that isn't the case. We work mostly with small businesses and mid-market companies, and our premiums are much more affordable than you think. And we offer the most broad form of coverage in the marketplace from a cyber perspective.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Kevin. This next slide is pretty shocking to me. So despite all the things that we are hearing about, it's interesting that most people have auto insurance, and I don't really know anybody that doesn't have auto insurance. But when it comes to cyber insurance, and we're seeing all these statistics, only 17% of companies even have it. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people just don't know where to start. A lot of times how Matt and I see it, it'll often be quite reactionary. Either they've been a victim of a breach, or you're trying to sign a contract with particularly maybe a big client, and they require you to have cyber insurance, or you're just trying to meet certain compliance frameworks because of the industry that you're in. And a lot of times you will, turn to your broker who's helped you procure other lines of insurance. But cyber is a bit of a different animal, and you need some other group to, maybe provide a little bit of guidance on what you need to do from a cyber security perspective to qualify for here. And that's the whole point of, why Coalition wants to work with groups like North Star, is to be able to provide their clients a novel service that will help them kind of develop that roadmap and achieve a clear path to not only insurability, but policies that are affordable.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on to Kevin and reiterate his comment about, one, of course, not knowing where to start. Two, it's I think, whatever IT provider or inside IT may not have this top of mind, right? So that it's not something that's being discussed. There's so many other priorities that organizations have when it comes to their technology. But a big one that I'm seeing, and a big reason why we're partnering with Coalition, is just knowledge of the products. What is necessary, what is unnecessary, and how to best fit some sort of coverage for that particular business. We have worked with other organizations in the past that just does not understand the cyber landscape and what is necessary to protect. So I think that hopefully is starting to change, right? But expertise in this area is a little bit weak. And so we wanted to work with an organization like Coalition to help shore that up.
Yeah, for sure. And also up until we had this partnership with Coalition, honestly, there's been a disconnect between the cyber insurance agent and the IT service provider. Huge disconnect. And both of them really need to work together, because, let me just kind of point this out. So this is kind of what we see from our side. We know cyber insurance is important, but then our customers come to us with these, 27-page applications, and they give it to us, and they assume that just because we're their IT service provider, that all of these things are being met. And sometimes it can be further from the case. Our agreement doesn't, say that we're going to do third-party pen testing every single month, or, that's just an example. But, I think maybe part of the reason that a lot of people don't get coverage is because, their regular insurance application might be 3 pages, and then they go into the cyber realm, and now all of a sudden it's like they get a stack of papers.
Yeah.
And then, they got to fill this out. And if one thing is checked that it's being done and it's not accurate, then when they go to actually file a claim, it can get rejected. So that's kind of what we're seeing on our side. and why it's so refreshing to work with Coalition. And I'll show you guys later, the portal that Coalition has, which is so much more friendly for us, for the customer, and for the insurance agent. Any thoughts on this, guys?
Well, yeah, just I think what differentiates Coalition is the way that we underwrite. Our application is 2 pages long. And we're able to do that because of all the information that we collect up front. And we want to know, as Matt and I like to say, we're a data company that sells insurance. And our whole goal is to know more about that business from a cybersecurity perspective than they know about themselves. And then from there, we're able to more accurately assess and price that risk, and then tailor coverage to, a business's unique profile. And so maybe there's a specific endorsement that's really important to them.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're more concerned about, having a lower deductible, which is what you're going to have to come out of pocket for in the event of a breach. Or maybe there's a particular supplement for a particular line of coverage that you're very interested in. So Coalition, the way that we underwrite and the information that we collect, enables us to provide that level of coverage to clients, and they're able to get it in a much more efficient way.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, I would add here that nobody likes to fill out an insurance application. They're tedious. To Kevin's point, we pride ourselves in being very short, very succinct. But what I think the benefit of North Star and Coalition working together is these are all reactionary type of engagements. As you mentioned, a client will hand you this application, say, I don't know how to fill this out. And so you're going to have to go through and work with them to make sure you have all of the appropriate information filled out. The program that we've built together that's going to benefit all of your clients and really anyone that comes into the program for between the two of us is that this is going to be more of a proactive engagement where you're going to essentially be working through the application in the form of what security solutions need to be in place. It's not going to be, hey, fill out this document. It's here's why you need multi-factor authentication across sensitive stacks. Here's why how you're going to need endpoint protection and response.
And coalition, what I like about the way you guys approach it is that you're actively involved. You're not just handing an application over, getting some responses on it, and then filing it away, and then looking to figure out some loophole not to pay a claim.
Exactly. But that's also why we want to work with organizations like North Star more commonly, because we want to work with the experts and we want to work with the operators that understand these solutions and why they're necessary, so that inevitably when a claim does arise, it won't be because they did something wrong. It will be because, the threats have consistently evolved, and this is just one way that a threat was able to sneak through. But, lo and behold, you're still protected as an organization fiscally.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And, just to kind of go through a few of the questions that we commonly see, almost every application asks, do you have multi-factor authentication set up? Are all computers encrypted? Do you regularly patch and do vulnerability assessments? This list here that we have of the common questions, what's interesting is that so many times the customer has maybe only one or two of these even in place, so it is important, that these customers that are getting cyber insurance, that they actually have somebody either on staff or an outsourced IT service provider to, go through and do a full risk assessment with them, to make sure that all these things are being done. And then, so now you've seen kind of what I consider the bad side of cyber insurance. Let's look at what is refreshing for us. So there's always going to be a checklist when you have cyber insurance, but what's nice about Coalition is that they have an active way for us to monitor this. They actually have tools that monitor all the things that are going on in the cloud. So they do the cloud monitoring for us with some great tools, and then they rely on us to tell them what's going on inside the network. So we work together with Coalition to basically make sure these items are being checked off and that they're actively being taken care of on a regular basis, not just done once and then we forget about it. Like, this is ongoing monitoring. So,
Dan, I just want to add on to this a little bit because, you know, even before we started to get involved with coalitions, kind of interesting, maybe just a little history. We have customers that have used coalition and they do this monitoring piece as a proactive part of their service, right? To help their customers reduce the risk of ever having to make a claim. And so we would actually we'd be on the receiving end, right, of customers that would get the results of these scans for us to also review some of the items that they came up with, right, that could be of concern. And so just the fact that we started to receive those scans was a big reason why when Kevin and his team reached out to us about building a partnership, right, between IT provider and insurance carriers, underwriters, brokers, I was so on board with this because, you know, this is an organization that's proactive in this. We want to be proactive with our customers and being able to build a relationship, right, where we can, you know, I know you're going to be talking about left and right of bang, right, but being able to cover that whole gamut of potential risk and breach was an ideal situation for us. And what you see there is kind of the result of that. And now we're on the inside finally, right? And
yeah, and there's open communication between us and the carrier. Like I really
true partnership, right?
Yeah,
Actual partnership.
Up until now, we always just felt like, okay, well, let's go through this extensive checklist, be very careful with everything, and it's like they just want their checklist back, and then they don't want to ever hear from us again. And it's like, hey, let's work together and make sure we keep them safe. There's been such a disconnect. So I really applaud a coalition for coming up with this program.
And Dan, just to I want to expand a little bit on this checklist real quick for everybody's benefit. If I'm the business owner, like, why is this important to me? And Coalition has developed this checklist based off of like where we're seeing, claims arise from. And this is why we're looking for groups to implement these different security measures, is to ultimately prevent them from experiencing a claim. And why we're looking to work with a group like North Star is, in layman's terms, to give the client the ability to have the safe driver discount around cyber insurance. Mm-hmm. And so now that Coalition is getting visibility into what a client's doing internally in their network, we can now reward them on the policy side in terms of premium credits, reducing deductibles, more expansive coverage. And so if you're that end business owner and you're trying to think about how, like, Geico these days, they're trying to put something in your car to see what you're doing on the road. And if you, drive a little bit better, you're going to, get better insurance terms. So the same ethos behind this.
And Kevin, I just want to say too, that it's more than just words with you. We're actually seeing that in practice now. Working with you guys, with customers, going through the program. It's like, that's a legitimate, what you are saying right now is exactly what you guys are doing when it comes to discounts, premiums, working through that whole process. I just want to say it's been fantastic.
We want to reward the customer for their proactive cybersecurity investment. And a lot of other incumbents, they'll just rely on, industry, revenue, employee count, record count. And as Matt and I always like to say, we take a deep dive into understanding the individualistic landscape of each business's cybersecurity posture. And so as a result, we're able to reward policyholders for better practices and solutions in place. And that's, to me, the real crux of this relationship, is not only that, path to insurability, but it's getting them access to the preferred, policy, or the preferred policies that's ultimately going to protect the business and save the customer money.
Yeah. And I mean, really, my hat's off to Coalition, because you guys are smart enough to know that if you take a proactive approach like this, you're going to have less claims. The less claims you have, the better your company's going to do. That's why so many people have been getting out of the cyber insurance business, is because, the claims have been killing them.
Well, and hats off to North Star for agreeing with our philosophy and joining us in this adventure.
Yep. All right. So this is this next slide. We're going to talk a little bit about what we like to call boom. So boom for us is when there actually is a cyber event. And so what we think is the best risk management strategy is to have a security focused IT service provider on the left side of boom, making sure that you try and, hopefully never have boom happen. And then back that up with a great insurance company like Coalition that's going to, jump in and take care of everything and basically be your incident response, should something ever happen. I think if you have these two components to your risk management strategy, you're going to be successful, and, you don't have to worry about, all of the things that are going on with the cyber attacks. You can just have peace of mind that you're doing all the things right, and if heaven forbid somebody does click something even after they've been told not to, you've got a company there that's ready to jump in. I mean, what I love about Coalition's incident handling is that, they have an entire team in-house. They've got a team of lawyers, they have a team of forensic investigators. They have every single thing ready to go in case you ever need them. And I can't tell you how important that is. I can't tell you, Ken and I have been involved where companies have reached out to us because they've been breached, not customers of ours. And we jump in and we want to help them. And there's no incident response plan. It's like herding cats to just figure out what the plan is going to be, just to get things triaged. And I can tell you, if your business has stopped operating because you've had a cyber event, like, you are sweating bullets. All of a sudden now your revenue is dropping and your costs are soaring. And, really, I really think what you're looking at here on the screen, I think this is the perfect picture of risk management, in my opinion.
Yeah, appreciate that, Dan. And I think for the attendees today, I have kind of a little anecdote that I think is pretty interesting and really conveys Coalition's value prop on the Right of Boom side. So in January 2020, we had attackers compromise the email account of a nonprofit's finance director. And 4 months had passed as the attackers searched the policyholder mailboxes for terms related to finance, banking, account information. And then next, the attacker set up rules to move a series of legitimate emails from the policyholder's inbox to their junk folder. And then the attacker spoofed the nonprofit's legitimate domain, set up email rules to divert replies, and sent compromised attachments. And they sent an email to 6 people within the nonprofit facilitating 2 very large fund transfers of roughly $620,000 each. So nearly $1.3 million. And the subject line was change banking service, citing COVID-19 as the reason. And then shortly after the payments were made, employees of the nonprofit received emails requesting gift cards. And then additionally, the policyholder, they did not receive the proper confirmation of funds being received. And so they quickly realized an event had occurred, and they reached out to the Coalition incident response team, and our team sprung into action. And our CIR team coordinated with law enforcement to file a report, stop the funds from being transferred. CIR also put in a takedown request to remove the fraudulent domain, preventing the policyholder from receiving additional fraudulent emails from the domain. And due to our swift response, we managed to claw back all of the $1.3 million less $500.
Wow.
Yeah. See,
That's
I mean,
impressive.
And so to me, like, if you're a policyholder with us and you get breached, that is the kind of work and the service that you're going to be benefiting from. Most people, when they get popped now, they'll call their lawyer, and then maybe they'll reach out to their insurance provider to see what's going on.
That clock is
You
ticking.
don't really have to worry about that.
No,
At Coalition,
Thinking.
yeah, 5-minute response time. And
Especially
clawbacks.
when you're dealing with wire transfers. I mean, time is of the essence. Like, you have very little time to get that stopped. That's awesome.
They clawed back 1.2999 whatever amount of the 1.3 million. And so, that's just wanted to provide that as an anecdote for your attendees to give you a sense of what Coalition is doing.
Yeah, it's a great story, Kevin. I think you and Dan both highlighted something though that is often I wouldn't say disregarded, but maybe just forgotten when it comes to ultimately what happens when there's a breach or when there's a loss of funds. You're also losing time. And Dan, you mentioned it around sort of the business has been interrupted. And so even if you get the money back, we're now talking about time that has been taken away from generating revenue or running operations of the business and ensuring that customers are getting the service that they need. And business interruption is actually something that is insured as well. So the money that is lost from the business and the time that it takes to respond to a cyber event of any type and to get the business back on their feet and operating at 100% capacity, that's also an insurable event as far as cyber insurance is concerned. So, you know, it's not just the hard losses of money has exchanged hands in a fraudulent way, but also it's that lost time and that lost dedication to running the business.
I mean, Ken and I have both witnessed ransomware attacks. You know, I had a company in Alabama that reached out to me when they got hit. That they were the second company of an IT person that got hit. So the IT person had two companies at the same time get hit, right? Bigger company, he goes and tries to rescue them. So he leaves this other company hanging, and we jump in and, you know, start helping them. But I can't tell you, you know, there's all different kinds of cyber attacks. And one thing that happens now, what we see with ransomware attacks, is where they just really don't really see any value in the data you're holding, but they see value in holding you or locking you down to the point that you can't work. So I go into that office, nobody can use their computers, you know, nobody can do anything. And you know, that is them putting pressure, because now the company is starting to lose money. Now costs are starting to go up, and you know, they're trying to negotiate a ransom to get back in business. And so, you know, I think a lot of people, unless you've been through a cyber event, you don't understand all the different scary scenarios that you can be facing.
Yeah,
And
which is why.
let's not forget Uncle Sam wanting to get his cut of regulatory.
Yeah, and that's where you really need cyber insurance, because you could be fined by the government. Probably there, you know, let's say you get hacked, and you know, your email sends out a malicious link and somebody else clicks on it. Now that company gets attacked, you know, there may be lawsuits coming next, you know, so you've survived this huge event, and now you've got to fend off all these lawsuits and everything else. So I can't tell you how important it is to really make sure you have a good cyber insurance policy.
Yeah, and you know, and besides lawsuits, you're talking about fines, but especially with our compliance regulated industries, right? So if there's anything that happens within, say, a HIPAA breach, so you have not only your potential risk of being able to not serve your community, which is the biggest crime, right? Like, we've worked with rural hospitals that have been at risk, right, of closing, and they are the only healthcare for miles and miles, right? But then you know, then you've got the added problems after that of compliance, reporting, you know, and the possibility for fines after the fact for maybe not doing the right thing when it comes to the compliance piece of it. So the point I'm making is preparation, right? And then the understanding of how swiftly you need to act.
Yes.
Yeah, and we've seen too where, you know, companies, they'll have an IT service provider, but they won't have insurance, and then they get breached, and then they'll try to go after their IT service provider. Well, you know, the only thing that's going to work out for you there, if you're the company that got breached, is if the IT service provider did a bad job and failed to do something, because then maybe you can go after them, their E&O policy, right? But if the IT service provider did everything right, you know, there's nothing you're not gonna win that lawsuit.
Yeah. But you know, we spend a lot of time on using the slide here on the right of Boom, but I think it can't be understated the value on the left side. You know, having a security operations center that is watching all malicious activity on a 24/7 basis, that's an understated value. And I don't think anyone in this panel would say it's, you know, understated. We certainly see the value in it, but we see actually a lot of interesting conversations around a lack of perceived value for something like that, because they've blocked so many malicious attacks, or because they've responded to things so quickly that it never even hit the customer's radar.
Right.
You know, it's important to know that no news is good news when you've done the right thing on the left side of the boom here.
And I mean, it is interesting you bring that up, right? Because sometimes, you know, we're trying to do a better job of even demonstrating. I'll just use that bullet point that you cite, right? Security Operations Center. So on any given basis, one particular customer could have thousands and thousands of alerts that happen, right? So obviously there's some sort of automation, you know, some software that recognizes, hey, this is kind of anomalous behavior. And then that goes to the Security Operations Center to review it, an actual live person looking at this stuff. And this happens 24/7, 365,
All the
thousands of these alerts, right? Have to be reviewed and triaged. And it may come down to one or two, maybe in a month, right? That's like, okay, this is something that could be legitimate. Go check this out. But nobody usually sees this. Customers don't see
Yeah.
that, right?
It literally is a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
On the left side, there's a haystack of huge amounts of work going on.
Yeah.
And then there's a little needle that gets dropped in there.
Yeah.
And you know, hats off to our SOC, because they usually find it immediately, and nothing
And threat
happens.
actors are not foolish. They're not dumb. They know the right times to attack, and it's when folks are sleeping or when folks are going on holiday. We see a huge spike in attacks around major U.S. holidays, especially Christmas time and 4th of July, things of that nature, where they expect less attention is paid to the overall health of the organization from a cyber attack surface area. And so having that 24/7, 365 type of security operations center that it has your back, it's absolutely mission critical. It really prevents a lot of that right of boom activity ever really rearing its head at that point.
And we're now able to offer this to organizations of, smaller size. This used to be the luxury, right, of large enterprise companies. And, obviously as the threat landscape has changed, the need for this has grown exponentially. And so being able to have the capability to provide this in an affordable method is, I mean, it's honestly just a recent occurrence, to be honest, right, Dan? But I guess we're fortunate enough that we can be able to provide that type of level of granular assessment of breaches and risks as they come up that we would not have been able to do cost effectively 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think, for like North Star clients and people who are just, understanding like what the value of investing in an IT company and cybersecurity, because Ken, to your point, there's a lot of things that they don't see happen on the back end. And one of the, metaphors I like to use is, think of your IT company kind of like your offensive lineman, and they're providing all the protection so you, the customer, can kind of go score your touchdowns, run your business, make your money, enjoy your livelihood. But the offensive linemen, they're doing things that you don't see. And so a lot of people always go, why am I paying these offensive linemen so much? But they're running the necessary schemes to be able to protect you. And the reason why North Star and Coalition were so excited about working together is we now have the data where we can kind of be that offensive coordinator to, direct or influence how groups should be running those schemes, because we see where active exploits and incidents are occurring. And so by tying those systems together, you as the customer are able to kind of go win those football games.
Keep the analogy going.
Yeah. Just keep it running.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, Kevin. I like that. Yeah, so why don't we let's see how we're doing on time. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and open up everything to questions now. Let's move to this. Do we have any questions that
so
I saw a question from a gentleman named Harold about just how do I understand what I should get in terms of coverage. And Harold, to opine on that, it's going to be depending on your business's revenue, your employee count, your record count, your industry. And that's all something that you would want to get into a discussion with your broker about. But Coalition, we actually do have members of our team that specifically work on the insurance side and do all the underwriting, and they would be willing to have a joint conversation with, a member of the North Star team to give you some insight into how you should think about, cost and coverage based on your business.
Yeah. And depending what the industry is, I mean, I can tell you, we work with, several different industries. And one of the things that I kind of see as a gauge, typically 2% of revenue is going to cover, your cybersecurity, your IT, and your cyber insurance, somewhere around 2 to 3% of top line revenue. That tends to hold true. Of course, the riskier your business is, that may be higher. The lower risk you have, that could be lower. Mm-hmm. But that's typically what I see.
Yeah, I would add that the risk profile is a very important thing to take into account. Say we can use Harold as the example here. depending on your type of industry, if you have a lot of Internet of Things, as they say, IoT, if you have a lot of connected devices that operate in the real world, well, there might be then a conversation of, well, you should probably get first and third party bodily injury coverage as it relates to cyber events, which is something that actually happens, as well as pollution coverage. Now, if you're operating in a business that manages a lot of personally identifiable information, whether it's personal health information or personal credit card information or personal credit information, if you're maintaining a lot of those records, which by the way, I'd recommend please don't, offload that to a third party that specializes in it. But if you are maintaining or at least processing a lot of these records, well, we call those sort of the keys to the kingdom. That's what threat actors are constantly trying to gain access to. And so then it depends on, okay, well, then if I'm maintaining these records, I need to put the appropriate security in place, but then I also need to insure against the loss with those records. So then you can start to look at, well, what are the potential regulatory fines that I would potentially pay if these records were exposed? So you start to have to look at what's the total costs that could be incurred to my business if information was exposed to the World Wide Web, as it were. If none of these things apply to you, then you just need to start to look at, well, how do I operate as a business? Am I doing a lot of funds transferring? Am I doing a ton of business out of email? Well, then you need to kind of pivot and make sure that you have the appropriate security practices in place. Make sure you have the appropriate training in place to maintain those operations in a sort of in the cloud format. And then you can also redistribute coverage to those types of engagements. So you can actually have expanded funds transfer fraud coverage with Coalition versus putting all of your eggs in the basket of potential ransomware loss, right? So there's a lot of customization that can be done that, per Kevin's note, you'll want to work with your broker on. But it's not just your broker, it's also your IT and security providers like Northstar that are going to help you answer these questions around, look, you actually do a lot of business in the cloud and you do a significant amount of business over email. So these are two areas where we should redouble our efforts, both in a security and insurance perspective.
Yeah, man, that's definitely holds true. We got another question here, kind of speaking of as you build that risk profile for a prospect, how long does that usually take? So if you're going to work with a new potential customer and you're trying to figure out what their risk profile looks like, understanding that in order to be able to provide some sort of quotes or premium estimates, how long does that usually take to go through between, I guess, Northstar and Coalition?
Well, yeah. So through our partnership with Northstar is now leveraging the same platform that we leverage in the course of underwriting, which can take as little as 30 seconds to pull up a risk report. Using what's interesting about the sort of risk assessment in its lightweight format is it's pulling publicly available information. So we're actually gathering an organization's attack surface area as it exists today. So this can be done in a matter of seconds. And so you'll definitely want to talk to Northstar about getting that sort of lightweight report to determine, hey, what do I look like right now to a threat actor? And that'll scan the top 458 most attacked ports. It'll do a quick search, a quick query of any potential dark web data out in the world that may exist relating to your organization. But the extended scan and sort of that cyber readiness program that Northstar is bringing to bear with Coalition is probably the better path forward in determining what does your holistic risk look like. And at that stage, now you're walking down the path of, okay, it actually doesn't have anything to do with a quote just yet. It has everything to do with, well, what things do I need to accomplish before I even go to Coalition for a quote?
That's awesome. What is a typical deductible for cyber policies, and how does that actually work when a breach happens?
Yeah, great question. So this is also something that can be customized with your broker, depending upon what you want your total cost of ownership to be with cyber insurance. So similar to how you look at health insurance, car insurance, the more that you're willing to retain in the form of co-insurance, which is your deductible or your retention, as we've often referred to it in business lines, can affect the total premium. So if you want a very low deductible, a very low retention, well, that'll then be reflected in a potentially higher premium. So it range from $250 to tens of thousands of dollars, depending upon the amount of coverage that you typically will seek. But smaller businesses, you can expect to pay anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000 as a deductible. But again, something you can in fact customize with your broker to adjust the total cost of ownership of a policy.
Thank you. Any other questions? This has been great, Matt and Kevin. I appreciate that you guys were able to join us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for any of you that want to learn more about this, we're putting the link up to schedule a meeting with us. Happy to go through all of this with you, see if we can work with you and Coalition to get you secure. The name of the game is really just to lower your risk, and everybody's on a different path, at this time. So really, we just want to figure out where you are, assess that risk, and get a plan in place to lower it.
Yeah, and we're all on the same side here, right? Between Coalition, North Star, and our customers, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, and that is to reduce that risk. So schedule a strategy call with Dan, and we'd love to talk more about how we can help you.
Yeah, Kevin, Matt, thank you so much for attending this with us today, and we look forward to hearing from everybody that watches this, and hope you have a great day.
Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having us on.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.